Public hearing on the Petroleum Industry Bill takes a violent turn as representatives from host communities trade blows. I'm Linda Akibe and you're welcome to the Gavel. The Senate and House of Representatives organized a public hearing on the Petroleum Industry Bill during the week. The hearing, which held on 3 consecutive days, drew government officials, experts and stakeholders in the country's oil and gas sector all attending to make input into the important legislation. The PIB is a proposed legislation which is expected to entrench good governance, transparency and accountability in the oil and gas sector. However, the hearing in the House of Representatives was temporarily disrupted after some members of host communities of oil-producing communities engaged in a brawl over a leadership tussle. This report shows what transpired. For 2 days, the House of Representatives held a public hearing on the Petroleum Industry Bill, PIB. The hearing took place a day after the Senate concluded its hearing on the bill.
Civil society organization.
On the first day of the hearing, the hall was packed full as physical distancing was largely ignored. The PIB, when passed, is expected to provide legal governance, regulatory and fiscal framework for the Nigerian petroleum industry, as well as the development of host communities. The Speaker of the House of Representatives says the plan is to pass the bill within 3 months.
More importantly, I want to say that this bill, or this public hearing and the outcome of this bill, we intend to pass this bill by April. That is a commitment we have made. It is a commitment we have made. Some may consider it a tall order, but we will do it. And we will do it with every sense of responsibility, without compromising the thoroughness of the work that will be done. It is important that we all, whether we participate or we do not participate, we are all fully engaged, because the outcome of this particular bill will determine a lot of things, because this is the foundation upon which our economy, the foundation upon which there's so much talked about diversification of the economy, will be made. Because for you to diversify your economy, you have to invest money.
Some experts in the oil and gas sector presented their submissions on the bill at the hearing.
Passing the law after all the relevant processes have been completed is only a means to an end, not an end in itself. The end thereof being to operationalize the law in a manner that best achieves the aims and objectives detailed earlier. The law can have the desired multiplier effect on the economy, investments, infrastructure, employment, the environment and well-being of the citizens only when we all work together to bring into existence the state of affairs within our expectation.
Our target for 2023 was 33 million barrels of oil per day. But the reality is that this country has potential to consume 3 million barrels of oil per day. So we have our own market that is ready for us. But unfortunately, because of the fiscal nature and the structure that we have, we are not able to do this. And the reality that is unfolding today is that this economy is growing. We have a huge population that is growing. We have 70% of our population below the age of 30, and then the future is really great. And what we can do today is to focus on deepening our midstream and downstream. That means, bringing more gas into our domestic market. Yes, there's room for export, but there's a market for the domestic gas as we make progress. And this is part of the provision that we have in the petroleum industry legislation, Mr. Speaker.
It's our belief that through collaboration with the relevant stakeholders, as we're doing today, Nigeria can enact and implement efficient and effective legislation which will go a long way to reposition Nigeria's petroleum industry to reach its full potential. And the PIB, we believe, represents a golden opportunity for this. Now, Nigeria, I'm sure as you all know, has the largest hydrocarbon reserves in Africa, with significant untapped potential to drive the country's economic and social growth.
Let me use this opportunity also to pay special tribute to my constituency, the oil and gas workers that have created the wealth of this country. It is really a concern because nowhere in this bill, as represented, those workers are represented by Nupeng and Pengersen. Nowhere in this bill has any provision been made in line with ILO global standards to try to make sure that they are accommodated. And therefore, in some of the presentations we have made specific provision because our assumption is also that this law will subsume some of the existing laws.
Some oil-producing states also made presentations mostly related to the host communities and the governance aspects of the bill.
We disagree with a 12-month incorporation period because we think that the host communities need more attention than even as much as the business itself requires. And therefore, we believe that it should be reduced to 3 months from the proposed 12 months.
The vesting of enormous powers in the minister that is not limited or constrained by oil-bearing states pose a clear and present danger to the oil-bearing state as it leaves the state at the mercy of the minister.
While some participants believe that the petroleum industry should have a single regulator instead of multiple agencies that could cause unhealthy rivalry, the general opinion on the first day of the hearing is that stakeholders want a PIB which will support government's revenue drive and also boost investors' confidence. The final day of the hearing on the PIB was dedicated to receiving submissions from host communities and players in the oil and gas sector. But first, the government side concluded its presentations, which it started on day one.
As much as we want to protect today's revenue, we should look at sustainability. We should look at how revenue streams will continue to flow over the years. And these are the areas from the Ministry of Finance that we are looking at, because we don't want to get all the money today and then lose tomorrow's money.
Next, the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria presented its position.
Petroleum Equalization Fund is marketers' money, no government cover there. It's our money. So we are happy with the way they have been managing our money, and we are saying their place should not be displaced or put in jeopardy.
It was then the turn of host communities, and a group known as Host Communities of Nigeria Producing Oil and Gas was called upon by the committee to speak on behalf of all host communities. But a fight broke out as members of other host communities insisted that they cannot be represented by the group. The Minister of State for Petroleum attempted to break up the fight. Attempts by security forces to remove the brawlers were resisted.
Is not going anywhere. He's the one doing the job in this country.
Calm was eventually restored, and the host communities of different oil-producing areas were allowed to make presentations.
The kind of things we used to do, the relation we have with our ecology is all disrupted. We are left behind. A lot of the time, we now have to resort to means that are not constructive. If you regard us as a fringe with our back to the wall, and you want to come to our land to drill hydrocarbon, and you want to tie our hands, we hear you.
I want to create the diligence of the leadership of the House and the Ministry to look critically into the recommendations as it affects the host communities. We must be given a paramount place in this bill. Thank you.
Oil company that is working in my place, please help us beg them to employ my sons and daughters so that I can have peace. I adopt my position. I plead with you people to help our kingdom so that the peace in the Niger Delta can be sustained. Involve our people and there will be peace in the Niger Delta.
Operational reasons.
Meanwhile, a group known as Social Action and key civil society organizations accused the National Assembly of being unfair with the hearings.
On Tuesday, January 28, 2021, representatives of oil-bearing communities and civil society organizations from the Niger Delta were denied the right to participate in the so-called public hearing organized by the Senate. After dedicating the first day of the hearing to elaborate presentations from oil company representatives and government stakeholders, the chairman of the committee promised to allow the presentation of host communities views the next day. Unfortunately, rather than accord the representatives of oil-bearing communities the same attention, they were denied the opportunity to speak.
While the National Assembly promises to take the discussion with stakeholders beyond the public hearings, the experts in the sector are hopeful that their concerns will be considered. We're still looking at the public hearing on the Petroleum Industry Bill, PIB. Now, during the hearing, different groups of people submitted memoranda detailing their observations and areas of interest in the draft PIB. Some of them gave presentations during the hearing. Now, we'll show you some of the key presentations during the hearing, but let's first of all begin with the host communities and their demands. Host community development is a key part of the Petroleum Industry Bill, PIB. The PIB has proposed that the host communities will receive 2.5% fund on the basis of the oil company's actual operating expenditure for the preceding year. The provision is intended to foster sustainable prosperity within host communities and to provide direct social and economic benefits from petroleum operations to host communities. However, representatives from host communities in the Niger Delta are not satisfied with the 2.5% fund and are demanding a 10% fund from the operating expenditure of oil companies in the region. They are also demanding 10% equity shareholding in the 3 companies to be created in the PIB. The national president of the host communities of Nigeria producing oil and gas made these demands during the Senate public hearing on the PIB.
This law that we want to pass in this next assembly will do justice and pass redresses on communities that have suffered, marginalized, and an environment that have been desecrated up to this moment. With this bill, which we are asking for in chapter 3, where bonds the yearning and aspiration of all the communities that house, produce, affected by the oil and gas exploration and exploitation. And we are saying that 10% equity share that will make us part and parcel of the business.
We also spoke with some leaders of the host communities on the sidelines of the hearing.
We are asking the federal government to know that we are to do the nomination, the selection of those who are going to be members of the commission. And so we will take time to actually nominate and select those who have what it takes to deliver what we expect from the commission.
The problem is that those who are advanced by the communities, those who know the sufferings of our people, are not the people, they've, sent into some of these agencies to handle the affairs. There's some people who want to become governors, people who are going to be senators, and they go there, they loot the place. They don't send people who have empathy, who understand the needs assessment, who are close to the people. That's why we're insisting that this community fund, that we should be the people to nominate, not the oil companies.
The world has moved beyond PIB. The world is talking about energy now. The world is no longer talking about petroleum. The world is moving into energy mix, energy transition. The world is moved on. So we should also consider moving it to energy industry bill as against petroleum industry bill.
You're welcome back to the Gavel. It's time to look at some of the observations by other stakeholders in the oil and gas sector of the Petroleum Industry Bill, PIB. And this time, we'll hear from representatives of trade unions and international oil companies. They made their feelings known during a Senate public hearing on the PIB. It's fingers crossed that the 9th Assembly will do what previous assemblies failed to do, pass the Petroleum Industry Bill, PIB. This Senate public hearing on the PIB is just one of the processes which the anticipated legislation must go through before it becomes law. The 9th Assembly is taking a different approach to passing the PIB from that of the 8th Assembly. It has left it to the executive to prepare the bill and send to the National Assembly for legislative input and passage. It is also splitting the PIB into 5 chapters.
We are looking at if members of the National Assembly apply themselves as we wish to consider and pass this bill by the first quarter, April, May, by the grace of God.
A proposed legislation as important as a PIB is sure to have input by stakeholders. The opinions range from concerns for domestic gas development, anxiety over a favorable environment for future investments in deep water, as well as pricing, tax, and concerns for the Petroleum Equalization Intervention Initiative.
The significant discovered resources exist but have not yet been developed in the deep water sector, and we believe there's a challenge with the tightening of fiscals and uncertainty in gas terms. Now, unfortunately, in our view of the PIB shows that deep water provisions do not, we believe, provide a favourable environment for future investments and for the launching of new projects. So to ensure investors are encouraged to finance deep water projects, we ask that the PIB should grant deep water oil projects a full royalty relief during the first 5 years of production, or a graduated royalty scheme as detailed in our submission. And we also ask that the PIB should remove the hydrocarbon tax from deep water, considering that companies will still be subject to corporate income tax. Deep water non-associated gas projects is particularly challenging and requires targeted measures to get projects off the ground. And there we would advocate for full royalty relief during the first 5 years, followed by 1% royalty on gas and liquids thereafter.
We are very, very pleased that by the time this bill will be passed, the major role of PF will be seen. Today you see NIPCO. By the time we conceived NIPCO, IPMAN had a serious help from Petroleum Equalization Fund. It will not be proper for somebody that is helping this country to develop. That is why we are here as IPMAN, to beg that you people should allow this petroleum equalization, because we have started something big that will help this country, where gas will be available in all the nooks and crannies. It will help us to save our environment, or have cleaner air to breathe, and I think it's going to be a win-win situation.
In our opinion, we think pricing should be expunged. So we have said expunge commodity product pricing from the draft PIB. We think if you legislate on pricing, then when there's need to do a change, as you well know, you have to go through legislative process because it's a law. And in our opinion, we think it will not be good in the long run. However, it is noted that upstream transfer price, that is upstream gas sales price, will fall into a transitory period. So that's the exception, because we have the upstream, the midstream, the downstream. So, but for the upstream, there's a peculiarity. So we think that the upstream transfer price will fall into a transitory period, after which it goes into full market-led, willing buyer, willing seller phase.
If the 9th Assembly is to pass the PIB before the expiration of the Assembly and during the tenure of the present administration, it must build a consensus on the bill between the executive, the legislature and industry players to produce a legislation which will enhance the growth of the country's oil and gas industry. Let's take a look at other activities in the National Assembly during the week. Some countries have started administering COVID-19 vaccines to its people. The Nigerian government has been discussing the procurement and administration of the vaccines to Nigerians. But it appears that the National Assembly is not on the same page with the Health Minister on the funding for the vaccines. The Minister of Health, Osage Hanire, is before the leadership of the National Assembly Joint Committee on Health.
The provision in the budget.
The committee is questioning the 10 billion naira which was released to the Ministry of Health for local production of vaccines.
Specifically, 126 billion was earmarked to health sector. So it was out of the health sector, that health sector budget of 126 billion. The chair of ad hoc committee on COVID-19 committee now engaged the ministry that this is an opportunity for us to revive that legacy of vaccine production in the country. So 10 billion, initially it was 5 billion that they are talking about. Then they said, apart from the plant in Yaba, they need to have another plant up country for ease of logistics and ease of distribution.
May and Baker had a commitment under that MOU to revamp, to bring technical distance. Have they made their own part of the component? Before Nigeria is now bringing, that's number one. Number two, is there in that place, that's the question he has asked, which has not been answered, that Nigeria will bring in money to give back vaccine? And it was not there. So now that will now bring me where I'm going. Why are we now putting down money? Why are we giving 10 billion to buy vaccine?
The appropriation is directed exactly towards manufacturing. And your distinguished senators, that partnership, that manufacturing, since we do not have the technology, that manufacturing has to be in collaboration with a group or a company that has the technology.
While the minister had said during one of the briefings of the PTF that the 10 billion naira was released for local production of COVID-19 vaccines, he's unable to hold that position before the lawmakers. Instead, he says the ministry is acting on a memorandum of understanding between the federal government and the foreign company May & Baker for production of bio-vaccines.
From your own end, you said it's for production of vaccine.
Of COVID-19.
COVID-19 vaccine.
That's what you announced to the public.
And from what the PAMSEC was saying, it appears as an effort to develop centers. So we are confused. Is that money really meant for developing centers, or is money meant for producing vaccine?
The question of whether it is directed at COVID-19 arises from the fact of looking at the title of 2020 Appropriation Amended COVID-19 Intervention Program. But also, again, the fact that the understanding is for the facility, that bio-vaccine itself, to manufacture, even if it is not COVID-19. So that's the way we took it.
Dissatisfied with the explanation and concerned that it does not have the details of the Memorandum of Understanding between the federal government and the foreign partner May & Baker, the committee reaches a decision.
In the memorandum of understanding, you are talking about supply. You went to the PTF meeting, announced you are producing COVID-19 vaccines. We come back here, we are talking about M and B, how to do that.
This 10 billion is just given to you. With due respect for what you are giving us, you don't have a specific detailed plan for it. And our decision for now, which I will come out to move, is that you can't spend it. We'll put it, we'll write it, until when you provide us with a satisfactory answer. And then we will want, when you provide us with the details, then we invite all necessary persons to go back. We'll read that one. But based on what we've had now, you don't have a detailed plan. That's my information.
The outcome of the interaction further raises questions on the working relationship between the executive and the legislature in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this is where we draw the curtains on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us and see you again next week.